wrote proposing the Declaration of Independence. You have to remember that in those days there were no copy machines. You couldn't see. Declaration of Independence. All right? This was printed on July 4th, 1776. And because of this printing, this is why we celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. I'd like to point out Mary Wollstonecraft, which is the portrait of the rights of women, and that's right here. And that is her handwriting. And this is the actual art, the document where she wrote a vindication of the rights of women, and this was actually in the late 1700s. Crossed out
well,
some
it
things.
says written in his own hand.
Performance by Sarah Bernhardt as well. And over there we see an advertisement for Houdini, as you could see. And down here we have Beethoven working on his composition. All right. In this little gold box that you see here is a lock of Beethoven's hair, larger than the regulation size for the batons. The reason was that he was a little bit of a narcissist. He was giving a special concert. He wanted people to be able to see him conducting the orchestra, so he had to make never us that crossed them out. The mold that grows which was of course our first antibiotic in the 1400s, and it's one of the first maps. And what he said is that once you got out to the sides, that here be dragons. That is the famous Columbus letter. That is describing his voyage of 1493 to his Spanish patrons who's paid for the trip. And that's the bear, tiger, ear, and piglet. And you see in the back there, you see how chubby he is now, and he's animated, and Piglet looks a little bit different, you know. And the reason for that is so they could really look in real time about the different body parts. And one of the things that Euclid did is that before him, printers could not figure out how to print geometrical shapes. And of course, Euclid was famous for geometry. Euclid figured out how you could print geometrical shapes onto books. And this is about botany, and it's medicinal. The birds of America. All right? We forget about your name or anything else at that point. Here we have the Green Book. I don't know how many of you know about the Green Book. There was a movie out, a guide for people of color who wanted to travel and wanted to know which hotels and which restaurants would serve them and allow them to stay overnight. These age from 3,000 to 5,000 years old, belong to Charles Dickens as well. There's a story behind the letter opener, and put it on this letter opener and gave it to Dickens as a gift. Tempest and Henry VIII. So had he not published the folios, it is printed in Latin. All right? This is from the late 1700s. It's actually from an Italian couple. The Jewish religion, if you did not have a signed contract, ketubah, you were not legally married. Inspiration for the early Wizard of Oz. The Little Family, daughter named Alice. He created the story. Alice loved the story and asked him, please, could he write it down so that somebody could read it to her at bedtime and whenever. So this is his desk, his chair, his lamp, his writing board, whatever. You know, it ripped. And we did have it repaired, of course, and nobody's been allowed to sit in it ever since.
We read it when I was a kid. All four of us, my parents, read it to the home.
But the theatrical performance, not the movie. All right? So this is the stage setting for In the Heights. Remember that when Manhattan was first settled, it was settled by the Dutch. It was called New Amsterdam. And eventually he's building we would never allow such a thing in today's world, of course. We also have the first edition of that New York Times in our archives.